Literacy for the 21st Century. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to view this brief presentation. We hope that, by presenting what we have to share in this format, we can save your valuable time at the next meeting, devoting the time we have in person to dialogue and discussion. Over the past 3 years, our district has built an awareness about what new curricular standards mean for the future, examined the ramped-up rigor that such changes demand, and begun a process of revamping our curriculum to build in that rigor. Let's take a brief look at where we've been recently, where we're at now, and where we see ourselves going. Last year, the literacy side was largely devoted to developing model curriculum units. Teams of teachers from around the district met to craft units and lessons aligned with standards for literacy across the curriculum, focusing largely on teaching discrete literacy skills using course content as a tool. This past summer, that effort reached a culminating pitch when 7 such teams convened and created 4 such units each for English 9, 10, and 11, biology, chemistry, world history, and U.S. history. Most of those units are thematic, and all of them challenge students to grapple with information from various print and media sources in much the same manner as the SBAC performance task. They were, however, a bit tricky to access on SharePoint, where they were initially housed. So, our first step this fall was to design a new web page that has, hopefully, made this curriculum more accessible than it was when posted on SharePoint, and organize the materials in such a way that teachers can select the lessons they need based on skill, content, or theme of instruction. Let's take a look at that new web page now. From the Kern High School District Start page, we go to our California State Standards page through a direct link found in the gold box labeled District Information. On the navigation bar at the top of that page, we see several subject areas represented. Any of those, through its pull-down menu, will offer us the courses for which model curriculum units, or anchor units as we're calling them, have been written. Let's choose English, then English 11, as an example. The outline you see here has the same outline format you'll find for each of the other courses, regardless of subject area. The major headings in rust are the titles of the units. Subheadings in green break each unit into its component categories. A unit plan, which links us to a full script that a teacher may follow verbatim or adapt to his or her unique classroom context and environment. To a PowerPoint, including embedded video clips, and to a much more concise lesson design template that lists the standards, learning targets, instructional strategies, and methods of assessment the unit contains. Daily resources, which links us to every reading, handout, and set of student directions that teachers will need. What it looks like in the classroom, which links us to video clips of demonstration lessons conducted by the authors of the units themselves, and samples of student work that the demonstration lessons generated. An important note here: the level of security for the web page is set to serve 2 missions. First, to convey the Kern High School District curriculum to the public at large. Second, to maintain our adherence to legal and ethical standards of copyright, privacy, and academic integrity. Thus, the lesson design template, unit overview, assessment rubrics, and any readings or media within the public domain are viewable by anyone, anywhere. Teacher scripts that contain assessment prompts, PowerPoint presentations that link to copyright material itself, test questions, answer keys, samples of student work, and classroom videos are password protected. Here, we see the prompt to enter a username and password. Usernames and passwords are those we all use every day to log into the district network. Our next step was to bring together a number of proven literacy building programs at our annual English Chairs Summit. AVID, REAP, and ERWC share common strategies, common instructional values, and thus a common language of instruction. All participants at the summit received full and permanent access to the vast online library of ERWC curriculum. At the same event, we introduced the SBAC Digital Library and the SBAC Blueprint. We paid special attention to the correlation between Bloom's, Webb's, and Costa's taxonomies of rigor, or depth of knowledge in the SBAC terminology. Through these schema, we are now able to define and perhaps even quantify the rigor of our instruction and, more importantly, of student learning. Perhaps most importantly, at the summit, we saw that we already have in place a solid foundation for the rigorous demands of the SBAC. The shared emphasis on rhetorical writing, inquiry, and collaboration that our AVID and ERWC classes have promoted for over a decade is precisely the emphasis we now find in the SBAC performance task. We need not reinvent the wheel. We need only expand the traction of the best wheels we have. So, where are we going? SBAC, through the University of California at Los Angeles, will release its resources for interim assessment on January 28. We expect that set of materials to provide teachers with the kinds of resources they are accustomed to using as CFAs, while the digital library provides materials for the ongoing formative assessment process. Making appropriate use of these resources will require additional collaboration and coaching. As State Superintendent Torlakson put it in a meeting with the State Board of Education last week, a holistic approach to professional development. As that professional development unfolds, and as the digital library itself expands, we are likely to see it as another valuable source of instructional materials that will build increased flexibility into an already existing inquiry-based curriculum. But the big news is that for English language arts and English language development, we now have a framework. Let's take a moment to consider the place of a framework in public education. For many years, and recently, we've placed considerable emphasis on blueprints when planning our curriculum and instruction. The CS2 blueprints, the Casey blueprint, and perhaps even the SBAC blueprint. But blueprints drive tests. Frameworks drive instruction. We should not confuse the two. Standards, whether old or new, all drive the rest. But standards without a framework are like a mind without a body, filled with good ideas, perhaps, but lacking flesh and blood, invisible. When we want to know what standards-based instruction looks like in the classroom, we need a framework to flesh it out. A new framework necessitates new courses of study, since they derive directly from it. The courses of study break down into units, which then break down into lesson plans. Education 101, right? But worth reviewing at this point in history, because for the past 15 years, we have had in our state a set of frameworks that were largely lists of standards, with a few explanatory comments appended here and there. And in well-intended efforts to flesh out the standards, to prioritize our day-to-day work, we often turned to the blueprints. So did the publishers of textbooks. Small wonder, then, we often heard we were teaching to the test. But that no longer needs to be the case. Principals, APs of instruction, department chairs, PLC teams, and individual teachers can now look directly to the state framework for guidance. It is replete with guiding principles, research-based strategies, and with snapshots, narrative vignettes portraying quite literally what this looks like in the classroom. Chapter 7 of the framework alone contains about 90 pages of such snapshots. To summarize them succinctly, they all vividly portray the key elements of frequent writing, ongoing inquiry, student collaboration, flexible organization, and, of course, rhetorical reading. The framework is comprised of an introduction, 12 chapters, a list of resources, a glossary, and one appendix so far. As you can see, chapters 3 through 6 address content and pedagogy for the transitional kindergarten program through grade 8. Chapter 7 pertains specifically to high school. It is State Board of Education adopted and, at present, housed online. Running throughout the framework are 5 themes, which serve as section headings for specific chapters throughout: meaning making, effective expression, language development, content knowledge, foundational skills. A few definitions. In terms of curriculum, content, and pedagogy, meaning making refers to reading in the broadest sense. Effective expression pertains to speaking and writing. Language development addresses grammar, syntax, and language conventions. Content knowledge pertains, for the language arts, to essential literary and rhetorical concepts and techniques. And foundational skills addresses the needs of English learners and all those who struggle with basic literacy. Moreover, the framework emphasizes that each of these elements is best taught in the context of all the others, holistically. And here again, we can see how ERWC and AVID provide models that we can expand. However, we should note well that each of the sections within Chapter 7 concludes with substantial information about adaptations for English learners, and this for a very important reason. Although ELA and ELD will retain 2 distinct sets of standards, they will now be covered under this one single framework. Although the State Board has yet to adopt frameworks for history and social studies, we can expect that those frameworks, when adopted, and perhaps those for science and technical subjects, will be organized along similar lines. Moreover, the ELA framework explicitly correlates literacy standards in English with standards in history, social studies, science, and technical subjects, as well as model standards for libraries. It strongly and directly recommends an integrated, interdisciplinary approach to building literacy, reading the word and the world. As such, it branches into multiple literacies in multiple disciplines, but it also converges around a few key points, such as interpreting and critiquing assertions and making and supporting claims of one's own. In the framework, we also see a balance between the knowledge that students acquire through the content specific to each discipline and mastery of skills, those skills unique to that discipline, as well as the universal literacy skills of decoding, interpreting, and making meaningful statements. The ELA framework will be officially launched at a February 10th event in Fresno, at which Brad Ruff and Louis Gillum will represent our office. In the meantime, we have begun meeting with interested colleagues from across the disciplines to begin studying the implications of the framework for new courses of study and scope and sequence documents based on what we know now. In our discussions, we have recognized the need to balance district-wide consistency with site-level autonomy. To that end, we recommend that 2 levels of documents be prepared: a course of study at the district level to chart the broad outlines of English language arts and literacy curriculum district-wide, and a more detailed, site-created scope and sequence which will explain how the course of study is applied at each site. thereby respecting the unique needs of student populations throughout our very diverse district. Each document should be organized by and aligned with the 5 themes or categories of the framework itself. We believe this next phase needs to begin very soon, and that sites will lead the way. On February 5th, we will make an amplified presentation of this information to assistant principals of instruction. But the questions we pose now, questions to you, are: what models of collaboration will best fit your site's needs in expanding an inquiry-based curriculum? What models of professional development will be most effective in promulgating the key ideas of shared inquiry, student collaboration, and others to those teachers not already familiar with them? What is the best venue for your site to use in drafting its scope and sequence? And what is the best venue for fair and transparent production of courses of study at the district level? We hope you found the time you spent viewing this has been worthwhile. To prepare for our discussion at the next meeting, we would ask that you consider these questions, perhaps consulting with relevant staff at your site, and bring your answers to that larger discussion. We look forward to your insights and your directives. Thank you.